Hey guys, this is Market Update. I've got the Bitcoin hat on today because things are getting a little bit silly. This right here is the biggest liquidation event for this bull market in Bitcoin, this candlestick. Not the tariff tantrum, not this huge drawdown we had from this expansion, this candlestick here. So I think the futures market got way ahead of itself and people are getting excited thinking we're going to now, go to new all-time highs, we're going to trade with a bit of leverage, and the spot market just isn't there. And so that has to correct itself a little bit. And apparently the biggest liquidation event is this tiny little candlestick here. So I've got the Bitcoin hat on because we need to remember where we are, which is Bitcoin is ranging into new all-time highs. You have to just keep with it and don't get liquidated. Don't use too much leverage in a volatile asset. But look, we're still in this breakout pattern, which is really good. I'm going to show you right here on the daily as well. We've just come right into it here, right? So this is where you would potentially expect to bounce in this chart pattern, right? Obviously, we had the low here. We come up to the top of the range. We come back into the higher low, which we've touched, and then we bounce from. And now we're right here. You can see this green candlestick on the daily trying to bounce again. This is maybe a level where you should actually just bid, right? And I think that's why the green candlestick is here right now, because people are looking at this chart pattern saying we're ranging, we're hitting higher lows. You need to bid this level, right? So you need to bid this 112. I may even bid here as well. I haven't decided yet. This white box here, I've got bids in. If you've got the crypto course, you can see all of my bids and where my trades are and everything like that. I update it for everyone. So if you're in the course, just see where my bids are. You know anyway. If you haven't got the course, I'll link everything below. But this white box here, I want to bid this. I bid this right here before. So I've got a couple of bids off and I've got lower bids in just in case we collapse and you get this kind of big washout before the next move, right? So I've got bids in here. I may even just bid this level because look, I'm bullish. And so I should be bidding these chart patterns, right? I should be bidding these higher lows. So I may do that later today, but look, just forget about September. Futures got way ahead of spot. I think the next 6 months, the Fed are lowering interest rates. It's not a massive deal. The market has priced a lot of this in anyway. But over the next 6 months, if interest rates are a little bit easier and we get the tailwind from the big, beautiful bill coming in, GDP looks fairly strong. I think we're okay. And so if the Fed start to worry about inflation again and say, we're really worried about inflation instead of unemployment, that's when I'm going to maybe get out my trades and start to be a bit bearish. But as long as the Fed is saying we're more worried about unemployment, that's their code to say things are going to get easier. We've got our finger on the button to make things a little bit more dovish and a little bit more easy if necessary. If the Fed say we're worried about inflation, that's not good. We need to get out. But as long as inflation is high and GDP is high and the Fed are a bit dovish, that's a pretty decent environment for stocks, NASDAQ, gold, all-time highs, right? So just keep the faith with Bitcoin because it is the outperformer. It doesn't move like those. It goes sideways and down most of the time and then re-rates. So that's why I'm in it. I think, that's why we're all in it, right? So if you trade, check out Apex as well because there's 2 days left for this. There's a $10,000 deposit bonus, 10% off trading fees via the link below in the description permanently. You also get a recovery mode as well on your first trade. So if you make a loss on your first trade, they will recover part of it, I think. So another 2 days for that. I'll leave the link below for that. If you trade on Bybit as well, 30,000 deposit bonus on there via the link below in the description. For my personal trading strategy, what I try and do is just play percentages. So I'll just try and dollar cost average into trades at decent prices. There's always opportunities in these uptrends, right? We're in a big uptrend now. There's been loads of drawdowns, right? So if there are drawdowns, I just try and add a little bit of Bitcoin, not going too crazy, right? Not really worrying about the price too much. But if there is a drawdown, and certainly if sentiment changes a little bit or people think, oh, wow, we've got a drawdown, I'll just try and go in a little bit there and dollar cost average into trades and then use very, very low leverage on those trades. The reason I use a little bit of leverage on trades is because that's the whole point of trading, right? Like if you're just buying spot and cash settling, just buy the spot. You don't need to trade with leverage or in futures or anything. Just buy spot, right? Dollar cost average. You're going to make those returns. But the whole thing with trading is that you're trading a cycle, right? You're trying to trade an uptrend. And so you want to trade with a little bit of leverage because capital efficiency. Otherwise, just going by spot, right? Which is absolutely fine as well. But the whole point of trading is you're trying to earn more Bitcoin, right? You're trying to earn more Bitcoin than the spot, taking a little bit of risk. So I use very, very low leverage and I'm just trying to add to my Bitcoin stack essentially with very low leverage that's not going to get liquidated and just trying to dollar cost average into it. And for me, I don't trade like one in and one out over short periods. My trade can be open 6, 12, 18 months. As long as I think we're in an uptrend and the Bitcoin price is going to rise, why would I get out of that trade? I just want to wait and wait and wait, maybe add and add and add to that position as well. That's how I do things. So it's more of just using a little bit of margin essentially to just carry on with the uptrend and try and make extra Bitcoin on top. So, I'm going to get out when I think the cycle has peaked, when I think the Bitcoin price and the metrics are way overdone in comparison to the longer term trend. That's when I can start to get out. For right now, it's not really like that in my opinion. And so for me, if we're not massively overdone to the upside, why would we get massively overdone to the downside? And with trading, if you're using leverage, the only thing to worry about is how much leverage you have and are you going to get wrecked, right? So if you can withstand a 20% drawdown, you're probably going to get wrecked. If I can withstand a 50, 60, 70% drawdown, then I can just stay in that position, right? It doesn't really matter. So if we're way overdone to the upside, that's when we could draw down 60, 70%. If you're at trend, why would you draw down 60, 70% from there? So that's for the trades. For my spot, as you know, I just dollar cost average, buying Bitcoin, trying to hold it as long as possible. So look, this is the cycle right here. This is the high yield credit cycle starting to move. That's pretty good news for the Bitcoin cycle. You can see that Bitcoin prices tend to move with high yield credit. As we're moving up, that's actually good news for the rest of this bull market potentially. So we're at 50%. Look, where do we get to? It's probably not the end of this bull market. You can see MVRV usually spikes towards the end of a bull market where you get these big runs. It's not happening. Now, I think this cycle is very different because it's a TradFi cycle. And you can see volatility definitely has dampened. There's just a lot more derivatives around the price, which crushes the volatility, which is fine, actually. And it's good as long as we're in that uptrend, right? You're getting much less drawdowns in terms of the percent. And when we do move as well, you tend to get some selling there. Again, that could be two things. It could be we're just at this 100K distribution. I think the 100K, the six-figure Bitcoin distribution is immense. You're seeing a massive rotation from people that were in at any price before saying, I'm going to sell at six figures, I'm going to take some off the table, right? So we're still in this. I think we've been doing it for almost 12 months now, this 100K distribution where anyone that has any amount of Bitcoin that they were looking to sell is going to be selling at 100K, right? Everyone said, I'll sell some at 100K, 5% off the table, I'll buy that thing that I wanted. And so we're in that. And you're rotating into all of these companies and the ETFs. So that's fine. That's one thing. The other thing is there's just way more TradFi trading around the edges of Bitcoin. And so you're seeing dampening volatility up and down. Lots of derivatives, options selling, people selling calls against it, which just, it's kind of this dampening of the volatility, which is absolutely fine as well, as long as you're in that uptrend. But I think the main thing for this cycle is that a lot of the metrics that we're looking at are starting to crush in volatility, which is more difficult to then try and figure out, are we at a top or not? So this is MVRV, which was very clear in the past, right? You would not sell any Bitcoin unless you're up here at 4, 5, 6. That's when you get these big moves up into bull markets. The price versus the realized price just moves up, gets above trend. Very easy to notice that you should be maybe letting some go here, or certainly when MVRV spikes up to 6, 7, 8, don't go in leverage trades, right? Same in the previous bull market. You can see it's just very much more muted now. There's just so much more trading around the edges of Bitcoin, traditional players with big size trading options around it, crushing volatility, right? And if you see this with a long-term holder SOPA as well, this bull market has been long. It's like a dredge through, right? It's just ranging. It's like a rev limiter on the price. You can see here, right? So you put your foot down, it gets up and then it just limits down. That's what it's like. Traditional players, they don't trade like this. Right, that's not going to happen, right? As soon as the price moves a certain percentage, you're going to get people farming volatility of the call options, selling the volatility, right, to earn yield and premium, but that crushes the price, crushes the volatility. It's just how traditional markets work. You can very clearly see it now, right? So maybe this cycle is going to be longer and more ranging, which also makes it more difficult to try and figure out where a top would be, which is, I think, a lot of the sentiment in Bitcoin and crypto right now. It's like, are we at the top? Because most things are at an all-time high. Bitcoin basically is. Ethereum hit one, XRP, Solana, BNB, a lot of all-time highs in the top 10 assets, right? Is that it? Because the volatility is so low, people don't know. I don't think so, and I don't think these are going to be the most useful metrics anymore. So we have to look really at the Fed and macro data. So as long as the Fed are fairly constructive, I'm okay. If they start to say, we're worried about inflation, that's not great because they're going to try and tighten again. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, right? They're starting to cut rates. The market's already priced in most of that. But as long as they're constructive, I don't think the risk reward is to get out of trades there, right? As long as they're fairly constructive, be in your trades, right? I think it's okay. If they start to say, we're worried about inflation, that's worrying, because if they draw down money supply, if they do more QT, or if they raise interest rates again, that's not great for risk assets, right? So as long as the Fed is fairly constructive, I'm going to be okay in my trades. I just take them. They control the market, so I'm going off them. Look at the ISM here as well. This is from Julian Patel. It's very low. Interest rates are too high, right? They're too high, right? They are. If inflation's 2.5%, 3%, and they're at 4%, it's just too high. Bring them down, right? You're not even dovish at that point. They're still doing a little bit of QT. The Treasury can pump in a little bit of liquidity. But if you get some refinancing here, as rates come down, that could drive ISM higher. That could drive the credit cycle higher as well. Bitcoin usually does well in that environment, right? So that's what we're looking for. So I would focus more on this. This is the ISM versus the 2-year bond yield. 2-year bond yields are going to start coming down as the Fed start cutting as well. They control the overnight rate, but obviously on the short end, things might get a little bit softer. And you can see there's a very big correlation here. So what we really want is rates to come down a little bit more, and then the ISM may pick up. If the ISM picks up, GDP picks up, that's all great. At some point, maybe inflation is just going to get too high where the Fed has to turn again. And that's what I'll be focusing on, I think, for the rest of this cycle, is just listening to the Fed, listening what they want to do. Because as long as GDP is positive, inflation can be higher than the target. It doesn't matter if the Fed's letting it go. They let it go in 2020 up to 8%. And we still went into the bull market because the Fed said, nothing wrong, right? We're not going to cut. We're not going to raise rates. As soon as they said, okay, now we're actually worried about it, then we crashed. So if the Fed's worried about it, I'm worried. If they're not worried about it, I'll just stay in my trades. I think the risk reward is okay for that. So if you trade crypto, Bybit deposit bonus down below, $30,000. Trade on Apex as well. This is a decentralized exchange from Bybit. So you can get a good deposit bonus, permanent fee discount, 2 days left for that. Link in description below. I'm James, this is MoneyZG. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.